Are you ready to untangle from your past, recover from heartbreak, and revive your life? This is Soul CPR with your host, Ann Papayoti. We've all had soul-crushing experiences and lost ourselves in our pain, but there is a way out. On this podcast, Amazon best-selling author, award-winning life coach, and advice columnist Ann Papayoti helps us navigate the path from heartbreak to healing. So now, please welcome the host of Soul CPR, Ann Papayoti.
Thank you for joining me today for this week's episode of Soul CPR Healing Out Loud. I'm so very glad you're here, whether it's for the first time or you're back for more. Last week, I had my first guest, Monica Housewright, who was here to talk about dealing with a diagnosis, something many of us have had to do for ourselves or someone we know and love. And I've reflected a lot since talking to Monica. And by the way, she got a clear report from her most recent scans, and what terrific news that is for us. But what came to me in my time of reflection from all that she shared was that while her melanoma diagnosis is not her first life challenge, it is the first one that she is not hiding from or facing and dealing with privately. This life challenge, she's going public. She's going out on TikTok, making posts and on our podcast to talk about it. And that means that she has chosen to heal out loud. So I just want to say that I continue to have heartfelt conversations with listeners between shows. And I had one conversation earlier this week about episode number 3 on purging relationships. And that's where we likened to kind of cleaning out our closets. And this particular listener was able to connect some of what was said to her current dating relationship and to recognize some truths that, like what might be, let's call it a designer label dress, and it simply didn't fit her. And that no matter how much she kept trying to wear it, adjust it, and turn it inside out, if you will, it just simply isn't for her. And all the while, others around her would look at it and say, it's great. Why would you not want that dress? Takes a lot of letting go of others' expectations, as well as our own fantasy, to see the reality of a relationship dynamic, doesn't it? But I'm very proud of this listener who still very much wants a designer dress, you know what I mean? But one who also has the self-awareness and the self-love to not settle for the wrong one. So if you missed that episode, do go back and have a listen. Today, we're going to be talking about replacement or rebound relationships, considering some of you have just cleaned out your proverbial relationship closet or in the middle of divorce season by choice or default. Now, others of you may just be starting to think about the process of sorting it all out. If after the Purging Relationships episode, you identified with holding on to toxic or unhealthy relationships out of fear of being alone, which is one of the main reasons. And we'll revisit in more detail the whys behind the driving forces to stay in unhealthy relationships in a future episode. But regardless, when it comes to intimate or romantic relationships specifically, there is a new reality to adjust to or cope with, whether we lost the relationship or chose to let it go. And the truth is, there's a large percentage of people who will not do the work to heal from the loss or of the letting go before moving forward and into their next relationship. So there's a lot of cautionary tales to tell here. And you may recall, if you heard one of the first episode, that the statistic for North America, at least, is that first marriages end at a rate of nearly 50%, and second and third marriages are closer to a failure rate of 70%. So those next relationships really justify a closer look, don't they? And first and foremost, when your romantic relationship ends, face it, you're going to be alone now, and that your intimate companionship is no more. Your plus one, your sexual partner, and for many, your best friend, your confidant, is no longer with you. And many, when I'm talking to clients or in support groups, many will describe it like a death, but worse because you may still have to interact with this person and see them move on without you and with someone else. And this will require a grieving period. And one big obstacle to healing, and I see this over and over again, is foregoing the grief period by attempting a new relationship too soon. And look, I know why you would want to skip the grief and just go on for the rebound, the next one, because grief is hard and it's an inside job. You can't give it away. You can't hire someone to do it for you, delegate it, and put a timestamp on it and say it'll be completed by a certain date. In The Gift of Shift, my co-authored, be sure and put the F in that word, the gift of shift, though. There is a gift in the other, at my age at least. In my co-authored book, The Gift of Shift with Tracy McDonald, I do describe grief in the chapter titled The Gift of Charlie Brown. And I describe it like being in the spin cycle of a washing machine. You know, it sort of speeds up and then it slows down. And just when you think it's over, it speeds up again, turning you upside down, keeping you off balance until it finally stops. And sometimes the door opens, but you're still stuck like a sock in the gasket. Then the door closes and the cycle starts all over again because somebody pushed the button. In other words, grief is not linear. It's not a step one, step two, three, four, five, and then you're done. It's back and forth and forwards and backwards until at last you've arrived at a place of stillness, peace, and acceptance. And there will still be a trigger from time to time, a button pushed, but the cycles are shorter and shorter. And as I've said before, time is a healer so long as we cooperate with it, allow it, assist it, as long as we don't purposefully sabotage it by exposing our wounds to the people, places, and things that irritate, deepen, or worsen it. So, what is grief, you may ask? And there are many poetic definitions, and perhaps my favorite is that grief is love unreturned. Now, the analytical part of my personality always seeks to understand the science and the research into our human behaviors. And so I also appreciate the grief model created by psychiatrist Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, author of the 1969 book On Death and Dying, where she first discussed grief as a pattern of adjustment for those who were dying. And her model has since been recognized as true for all dealing with change and loss. It's even used in businesses to help with change management. And the 5 stages she identified and that you are most likely most familiar with are denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. So grief, not a fun experience, is a necessary one to heal from loss, even if you chose the loss. It's more the loss of the person in your life. It's everything else that they represented, the place they held in your life. So, what else can you think of? What comes to mind that would need to be grieved when a relationship ends with a committed, intimate partner? When a marriage ends? What comes to mind for me, first and foremost, is the dream. What is the dream that was lost? And for some, it's the dream that possibly became a nightmare. I've spoken to many women specifically throughout the years who have admitted that they had a childhood dream of marrying someone that they loved and that they would thought that they were going to live happily ever after, right? That's the dream. They were attached to what we call magical thinking about love and marriage, and they felt invincible to how life might affect them. They were caught up in the fantasy of it all, and the reality of the challenges that might be presented never crossed their minds. And they found themselves later feeling naive and idealistic, angry at themselves, and sometimes at the adults in their lives who did not prepare them. I recall reading in a divorce recovery curriculum written by Harold Ivan Smith about fantasy and reality relationships. And Smith says fantasy and reality have only two things in common. They're both 7-letter words, and they both end in the letter Y. And I have never forgotten that. I've often said that I wish we spent more time on the front end preparing for the commitment to the partnership that we say in marriage is till death do we part, as we do for the wedding ceremony and picking out the colors and the cake and the actual celebration of making that commitment. When I think back to my first marriage, I know that my husband then and I did, or my fiance then, and I did engage in premarital counseling, um, but only for one session with the ordained minister whom we chose to perform our ceremony. However, I have to say there was little in the way of counseling us as a couple. It actually became a bromance between the two of them about all their shared mutual interests. It was their first time meeting. I happened to work for the minister, so he knew me well. And I just sat and listened and was happy that he got along with my fiance. I, too, was naive. So back to grieving. It was an innocent childhood dream for many of us, wasn't it? What else do we need to grieve besides the dream? What about just the naivety to the gravity of the commitment we're making? Some may need to grieve having held on far too long once they knew the reality of their situation because of the weight that the commitment carried, maybe due to culture, community, or religion. I know I stayed 8 years longer than I knew I'd made a mistake because I felt obligated because of the culture of my community and my religion and what I thought was expected of me. How about you? What about companionship? Do we need to grieve that? I mean, even if it wasn't quality time, just someone being there when you give up a relationship or you lose one. What about companionship? Something to grieve. Which was it for you? Did you cook together, eat together? Does that empty chair and no one sitting in it to say, hey, did you hear about so and so? Or what are your plans for today? While you sip your coffee, does that affect you? What about grieving the best friend? If this person represented your best friend, was this the one you confided in at the end of the day about your day? Is this the one you celebrated your highs with and leaned on about your lows? Was this the first voice you heard in the morning and the last one in the evening? There's so much more to grieve than just the intimate partner, isn't there? What about domestic chores, shall we call them? Certainly, once a committed relationship ends, so do the routines and rituals you were accustomed to sharing together. The daily chores even become highlighted that you're now doing them alone. I even recognize this now as an empty nester with a weekday traveling husband. I now take out the trash and recycling, and that's something that's been a job for one of my sons the past 20 some odd years. So I recognize that I'm alone on these days as I do these specific chores. I feel that twinge of loneliness. And what about all the couples things you did together? Did you have date night? Did you spend time with couples friends or play pickleball together? I think that's the fastest growing sport in America, I'm told. Did you go to church together? What was your always together thing? This is now lost, or in the least, the dynamic of how you will now participate and show up is changing. What is lost must be acknowledged and grieved. And then there is sleeping together. Although the big trend in new home development, I'm told, is separate primary bedrooms for quality sleep. Interesting. And I thought I was progressive to insist on the split mattress sleep number bed when we replaced ours recently. But full on separate bedrooms are trending as a healthy relationship choice. I truly find this fascinating and would love to see some data and research on it and how that's working out for longevity in relationships. And then there is the most intimate act of all, sex. Yep, we're going to talk about sex today as well. It's another loss that many must grieve when relationships are given up or lost. But first, we're going to take a short commercial break, so don't go far, and we'll be back in a heartbeat with more Soul CPR.
Mike Zorek, a three-time California state champion in Greco-Roman wrestling at 114 pounds. Mike, blind since birth, was born in Hartford, Connecticut. He was a six-time national placer, including 2 seconds, 2/3, and 2/4. He also won the Veterans Folk-Style Wrestling twice at 152 pounds. In all these tournaments, he was the only blind competitor. Nancy Zorek, a creative spirit whose talents have taken her to the stage and into galleries and exhibitions in several states. Her father, a commercial artist who shared his instruments with his daughter and helped her fine-tune her natural abilities, influenced her decision to follow in his footsteps. Ms. Zorek has enjoyed a fruitful career doing what she loves. Listen Saturday mornings at 12 Eastern for the Nancy and Mike Show for heartwarming stories and interesting talk on the BBM Global Network.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of the Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on the Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Welcome back to Soul CPR. I'm Ann Papayotti. And before the break, we were talking about grieving lost and discarded relationships before moving into another one or rebounding. And we identified how your life may be affected in different ways so that you understand where grief gets uncomfortable and loneliness can show up and circumvent your healing journey. For example, some of you, despite the quality of your overall relationship, were used to an active sex life with your partner. And others may have been longing for one for a while, and others avoiding it due to the lack of emotional intimacy. So, whatever the scenario, sex too soon in a next relationship is usually an indicator the relationship will not last. Some people say when I talk about this stuff, I'm like the big sister they never had that they wish they'd had. I'll be whomever you need me to be right now. Just listen up. There are at least 50 shades of gray that could interfere with your relationship recovery, if you know what I mean. All right. Sex, drugs, alcohol, these are some of the most common self-prescribed anesthesias for emotional pain. Overspending, gambling, overeating, Netflix binging, I don't know. Anything that numbs you out in the moment, like all anesthesia, wears off and the pain is still there. Only it's often greater, more pronounced, and oftentimes we've created a new wound or worsened the pain that we were already in because we couldn't feel while we were numbed out. We weren't thinking of the consequence of our choices or our behaviors. And there are always consequences. I don't have to spell them all out for you. Let's face it, for many, sex was a distraction from issues in the previous relationship, or perhaps it was a way to make up. Had a conversation about this with a friend and former client yesterday. And when it comes to a relationship too soon, you may say it's just sex. But is it really? Casual? With whomever? With anyone? Is this your revenge? If you like drama and chaos, buckle up and get ready for some drama trauma, then look in the mirror and admit it. This temporary physical connection is not filling the void. And your future self will thank you for resisting this temptation and missing out on all the consequences you're later going to call mistakes. If you find yourself in this space, ask yourself, am I needy in that I need someone to find me attractive and want me? Or am I angry trying to show him or her that someone wants me? Figure out why you're approaching sex this way so you know the source of your pain and that's what needs to heal. Now, when you haven't felt desired or desirable, it feels good to be wanted, right? Sure it does. But if you haven't recovered from the previous relationship, a rebound will be an intent to fill the hole. You will look for emotional completion. And ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, brothers and sisters, that may sound romantic in a movie line like Tom Cruise's character made famous in the film Jerry Maguire. You complete me. But let me tell you, the healthy approach is to be complete and whole alone, and then seek to be complemented by someone who is also complete and whole alone. Two confident, complete individuals. And the closer you are to a breakup, the harder it is to discern between what love is and the need to be completed or to have your hole filled by someone else. So, what does sex too soon mean to you? Does sex mean you're with someone? Let's face it, ladies, the majority of us do not share our bodies without feeling emotionally connected to a man, unless we have numbed ourselves. Now, hear me. This is a generalization, not a stereotype. Generalizations are based on what is statistically true for a specified population, and men in general have an easier time engaging sexually without the need for emotional connection, but it doesn't mean they do not prefer an emotional connection and committed partner. Right, guys? Again, statistically true based on research in the study of human behaviors. But regardless of research, it may not be true for you as an individual. So take it or leave it, but see if you see yourself reflected in the data. Now, look, for the purposes of our conversation, you may miss sexual connection. However, sex too soon has more potential to do harm than good. There are even more scenarios to consider than I've heard from other clients and in support group participants throughout the years. And this is your opportunity to learn from them. Here's one. Let's say that you're vulnerable with a friend and you cross that line. The friendship will at best change and at worst end. Do you want to deal with that loss too? And many, many, many are tempted to sleep with their ex. Why? The need to be missed by him or her, to feel desired, loved, to make him or her feel they made a mistake. Now that's a dangerous, dangerous emotional game. And that one last time might sound inviting or enticing, but one of you will get hurt. And here's another one that's been shared. The past exes, the one or ones that got away or that you left behind or that left you behind back before the most recent ex, and you're now wondering, what if? Well, a premature relationship of any kind is destined to fail right now. And if you didn't make it with this person before, there was a reason. So remember what you know. Besides, you can wait to explore this one again, but right after a breakup or divorce is not the time. Premature relationships often create fresh wounds and set us back. Find you again first. I also recall from Smith's divorce curriculum that we used for a while at my church that he also spoke about counterfeit and discount relationships. And when I thought about us having cleaned out our closets and now possibly replacing what we've created space for, it would be easy to skip the step that Marie Kondo said in her book, The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up, which was the important step of visioning what we want, or perhaps thinking we know what we want, but not yet having the confidence to believe we deserve it. And so we go bargain shopping, if you will. We get the counterfeit version. It looks like the real thing. Let's say the real leather handbag, but it falls apart after one season kind of thing. So we get impatient and we tend to not invest fully in ourselves. I mean, we all love a bargain, don't we? But let's not look for the least we have to invest when it comes to ourselves and our relationships. And in taking responsibility for your recovery from your breakup or your divorce, you have the chance to be wiser because of your experience and to learn lessons through your pain. But will you learn? You need time to think about what qualities you value, what qualities you cannot appreciate, what you want, what you definitely do not want. And most importantly, you need to take the time to learn about yourself and heal what needs to be healed. So, what might a discount or counterfeit relationship be? Would you recognize them? The three most common that I see my clients get involved in are the too good to be true ones. That's one of them. You know, the ones that you overlook and explain away the red flags because you want it so badly. So you kind of fast forward into that fantasy we were talking about. And this happens so often. So check yourself. Rather than getting to know someone, you're already kind of thinking ahead what it would be like to be married to them, to be in that kind of committed relationship. And it's just straight into fantasy. So remember what Smith said, fantasy and reality, two things in common, 7-letter words that end in Y. Okay. And let me tell you something. I remember someone saying to me years ago too, the fantasy's always better than the reality. It just is. So we got to really get rid of this magical thinking and stick to realities. Don't explain away red flags. Don't excuse them. Don't say it's not that bright a shade of red. It's just a little bit on the pink side. No, red flags are red flags. Another common discount or counterfeit relationship would be the one that's just like the one you just had, but it's better somehow. So your measuring stick's a little bit longer. So it's sort of like the same make, new model, but this really is a replacement, isn't it? There's been a lot of studies showing that people divorce an alcoholic only to marry another one with a different addiction, right? So the question to ask is, what is this saying about you? It points towards what needs to heal. And ultimately, healthy people will choose to grieve, and unhealthy people will replace. We live in a fast-paced now society, and people often ask me, how long before I'm healed? How long is it going to take? And people want this instant relief and gratification. I understand that. It's hard to do the work of healing. That's what I was talking about, grief. It's hard to grieve. It's hard to wait well, as I've said before. But to answer the question, psychologists tell us that it takes an average of 2 years, 24 months, to be fully ready for a new committed relationship. That's doing the work. Give yourself the time. It'll be worth it. You're worth it. All right, the third most common one I see, it's another bargain relationship that I call the rescue ranger. And this is where you're feeling victimized from your breakup or your divorce, and a hero comes along and saves you in some way. And rescue rangers really make life easy when it's been difficult. But the problem with this is that as soon as you get back on your feet, the relationship is no longer in balance, because a rescuer needs a victim. So when you're back on your feet and you don't need a hero, these can end badly or turn abusive. Have you ever experienced any of these relationship dynamics? If so, what's your story? You can call in if you're listening live, or write in the comments if you listen later. We'd love to hear from you. It's time for another short break, and when we come back, let's talk about the threat to our commitment to healing from heartbreak. The biggest threat out there, loneliness. So don't go far. We'll be back in a heartbeat with more Soul CPR.
Dr. RC will share extraordinary resources and services that promote educational success, as well as making a difference in the lives of all social workers, as well as the lives of children, adolescents, and teens of today. She will have open discussions addressing many of the issues that we face about our youth, and how being employed in the uniquely skilled profession of social work for over 18 years has taught invaluable lessons through her personal experiences. She will also provide real-life facts, examples, and personal stories that will confirm that why serving as a child advocate is extremely beneficial when addressing the needs of the whole child. Listen live to Dare to Soar, Saturdays 10 a.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network, and tune in radio as Dr. RC will provide thought-provoking information that will empower, encourage, and strengthen students, families, and communities across our nation. You can also visit her at soarwithkatie.com. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness: Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. Listen to John Hawkins' My Strategy, Saturdays, 1 p.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio.
Welcome back. Let's take a few minutes to talk about that feeling that inspires art, poetry, music, and more. The creation that comes from this feeling called loneliness is ironically beautiful, isn't it? And some of us have felt lonely while in relationships. And as I said last week, or a couple weeks ago, actually, don't kid yourself. An unhealthy or toxic relationship is a lonely relationship. Now, while there are millions of reasons to feel lonely in this world, alone does not have to equate to lonely. Yet lonely is a strong, pervasive feeling for many while alone and while in the company of others, both. So, I don't know, I was just thinking, are you guys up for a challenge? If so, here's your challenge. What's the first song title poem, book, or piece of art that comes to mind that represents loneliness in some way? I've always thought that the Mona Lisa looked lonely. I mean, she does hang in the Louvre, isolated from all the other masterpieces on a wall, all kind of by herself. I don't know. There has been much debate about whether she's happy or sad. It's all in the eye of the beholder, I guess, as is all art. Now, music. I could go on and on, but I don't know, the first song that pops up for me, this will really show my age, Dan, is All by Myself by Eric Carmen. Do you even know that one? I don't even know. And then I could go on. One is The Loneliest Number by Three Dog Night. Dan, what about you? I know you can't talk to me, but maybe in the chat. Anything come up for you? Oh, Heartbreak Hotel by Elvis. See, I could keep going. Anyway, I can't wait to hear and see if you guys come up with anything. Write it in. I'd love to see. But sadly, loneliness is considered an epidemic in our country. Even so, in pre-COVID research, and the literal isolation during the pandemic, exacerbated, yet it got worse, especially for our elder population. Then it even spread to our youngest populations during COVID, right? So, according to the American Psychological Association, the pandemic spike in loneliness is now decreasing, but our teens and our young adults are still struggling. Now, some people will blame that on technology for the social disconnect and the lack of social stimulation at the same time that really, I guess, got worse during the pandemic. And also for the deterioration of genuine friendships, as well as community connections. And that all of that combined resulted in anxiety and depression for this segment of the population. In fact, research I've read said loneliness is deadly as smoking and obesity. That's sobering, isn't it? I'm like, what? And why? Well, the why, because our core fundamental being as a human species is a social one. We are deeply connected to each other because we need each other in order to survive. It's like dolphins need their pods, and that's why there's so much work being done to prevent these highly social marine mammals from being kept in captivity. It's why for we humans, solitary confinement is the most punitive form of imprisonment. Now, that doesn't mean run out and get in a relationship. That means invest in yourself in a different way if you recognize loneliness is an obstacle to your healing. What you don't want to do is to let loneliness lead you into a rebound relationship and risk all the likely unhealthy outcomes that we mentioned earlier in the show. What you do want to do is find deep healing and meaningful connection. As humans, we are a social species, which means that we need each other in order to be well. So rather than replace your relationship or relationships that ended for specific reasons, invest in things like developing healthy friendships. Like, what's a healthy friendship? Mutually respectful, balanced, trusting, honesty, accepting, fun, supportive, enjoyable. You can keep going here. The ones that you kept during that closet purge, they mean something to you. Maybe it's time to go back and give them more of you now. This is something that was in a discussion yesterday. Now that the relationship has ended for this particular person, she said she's recognizing how important some of these other relationships are and that she had not really invested in them. She is now. How about volunteering? You cannot help but help yourself when you're focused on helping someone else. It's amazingly effective. Give it a try. Go plug in somewhere. Be an advocate for something that's meaningful for you. What about picking up a hobby? Something that you gave up or something you always wanted to do as a child and never had a chance. Take an art class, play softball. If you can imagine it, it's likely available. And if not, create it. Just start saying yes to something. This reminds me of someone who was a participant in one of my classes a few years ago. She had always wanted to take dance as a child, but had been body shamed, and so she did not. And as an adult, she not only began taking lessons, but then began teaching as a volunteer in assisted living homes to help keep the elderly engaged in moving their bodies with joy. So she not only engaged in what had been a lifelong passion, but also turned it into a purpose. How cool is that? Another thing that comes to mind as my dog is asleep here in my office is spend some time with non-humans. If you don't have a pet, or can't have a pet, offer to walk your neighbor's dog or go to your local shelter to volunteer. Animals are awesome and they're so non-judgmental. It's amazing what you can get in connection with an animal. Another thought that came to mind when I was preparing for the show is just to reconnect with friends from long ago, not the exes, but friends. Reach out to someone who knew you when. It's nice to have a chat with someone who just gets you. I have a whole group from high school that we have like a Facebook Messenger group, and sometimes somebody just says good morning like Wade did today, and it started this whole trickle effect of people jumping in and chiming in and saying hello to each other. You know, 40 some odd years later, we're all still friends. We all just get each other. It's amazing to stay connected to people from that period in your life. Another thing to do is make new friends. Do something that interests you, and you can start small. Just and you can make small talk even with someone in the group. So, like the weather, coffee, something that's a recent headline in the news, the movies that are up for Academy Awards. I've had clients have success with the app Meetup in finding mutual interest groups and activities in their areas. The point is make an effort, show up, see what happens. Another thing is just sit with your feelings of loneliness from time to time and write them down. Journaling is scientifically proven to help. Acknowledge what and how you feel, and who knows, maybe you'll write the next poem or song lyric. Just get them out of your head and onto paper. And I have to talk about moving your body as a fitness instructor on the side. Get physically active. Walk, run, bike, canoe, anything. And most importantly, perhaps be your own best friend. Let your self-talk be supportive and encourage yourself on your healing journey. That's going to help you get comfortable in being alone. And while you're out doing this, you're going to meet other people who enjoy these kinds of activities as well. And maybe find a walking club, running club, biking club, canoeing club. But get moving. Again, you can start with little things or maybe one big thing. A woman in my current support group mentioned that she said yes to self-care and scheduled a massage, and then she had an opportunity to go out with friends afterwards. But she was okay with going home instead that evening and being alone, knowing and trusting that the friends are true friends and there'd be another opportunity. And that, my friends, is healthy. We're going to take our final break now, and when we come back, I'll share a special story. So don't go far, and we'll be back with more Soul CPR.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of the Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on the Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Mike Zorek, a 3-time California state champion in Greco-Roman wrestling at 114 pounds. Mike, blind since birth, was born in Hartford, Connecticut. He was a 6-time national placer, including 2 seconds, 2 thirds, and 2 fourths. He also won the Veterans Folk-Style Wrestling twice at 152 pounds. In all these tournaments, he was the only blind competitor. Nancy Zorek, a creative spirit whose talents have taken her to the stage and into galleries and exhibitions in several states. Her father, a commercial artist who shared his instruments with his daughter and helped her fine-tune her natural abilities, influenced her decision to follow in his footsteps. Ms. Zorek has enjoyed a fruitful career doing what she loves. Listen Saturday mornings at 12 Eastern for the Nancy and Mike Show for heartwarming stories and interesting talk on the BBM Global Network.
And welcome back. So Dan had let me know he knew every lonely song that I named. So that's really cool because we're generations apart. Anyway, a resource I'd like to share with you if you're experiencing loneliness is helpline.com. And Dan's going to put that on the screen. In visiting their site, I found a ton of useful information for a variety of scenarios for different populations, including teens, adults, veterans, immigrants, and more. So I invite you to check that out if you're experiencing loneliness. It can be debilitating. So you don't have to go through even loneliness alone. Now, regarding relationships, I wanted to share with you that I had the pleasure and privilege of attending a wedding in San Salvador a couple of weekends back. It was a beautiful, sunny, blue sky afternoon at a coffee farm and event venue on the hillside of the volcano which the city is built around. I could not understand all that the minister had to say to the lovely young couple making this covenant to one another. My Spanish is quite rusty. However, I did pick up on the message that men need to feel respected and women need to feel loved in marriages. And the laughter came when the minister, who looked more like a Latin pop star with his mirrored Ray-Bans, tailored suit, and his hip undercut hairstyle, a reminder to not judge a book by its cover, by the way, said that these concepts of love and respect are in the everyday details, even when the other partner doesn't deserve them. Wise words. Something else I wanted to share with you from this wedding is that a woman seated at the same table as me for the reception, and I started a conversation. And like many women, it began about our children. And as usual, something interesting happened. Without prompt, she began sharing her relationship story. It's just something I'm used to, people opening up to me. I asked her permission to share with you as I found her story something that might offer a different perspective to some of you, a truth that may seem inconceivable. She told me that she and her husband were married for 15 years, then divorced when her youngest was 5 years old. They went through a difficult custody battle and didn't speak except through attorneys for 8 years. But then she found her son struggling with some things as he reached adolescence, and so she tried emailing her ex, and he did not reply for quite some time. In her email, she began with an apology for all the conflict and the fighting that had occurred between them and the awful things her lawyer put him through. He eventually replied and came to her home to spend time with their son after school, which became a regular visit. And after months of this, he asked her if they might consider getting back together. She was somewhat off put at first, had not considered this at all, but happy to see her son doing better. But she began opening herself to the possibility. And they have now been back together, dating, still living independently, yet committed to one another and moving toward one another, toward reconciliation, one day at a time, if you will, for the past 2 years. It's a testament to the ability to grow, change, heal, forgive, and move forward. They never stopped loving one another, but they both had to get past the past. They both did their individual work over the course of 8 years apart to learn about themselves and how they had shown up in the relationship. And so in this case, the replacement relationship with the ex was not the same as we talked about earlier. They are both different now. And that is what time can do when time is done with intention and with the purpose to grow and heal. They were brought back together because they had grieved, forgiven, and accepted responsibility for themselves. It's amazing what letting go opens you to receive. I wish them and the newlyweds all the best in their lives together. This show is titled CPR for a reason. If you've just needed CPR to revive you from a medical emergency and you rush back into life full swing, you may suffer a relapse. We all need time to heal. You schedule much of your life. Schedule time for healing as well. And when you do that, you just may be at the right place at the right time for the right one to come along. So thank you to Dan behind the scenes today for keeping me on track and the show on the air. And thank you to you, our audience, for listening. So as we conclude this episode of Soul CPR Healing Out Loud, remember that healing is not a linear journey. It's a process of profound transformation. So if today's stories resonated with you, please share the podcast with those who might need a lifeline on their own. Subscribe, rate, and leave a review to help us reach more hearts. You can connect with me on social media at Skyview Coaching on Facebook or at Ann Papayotti on Instagram, LinkedIn, and X. Let me know your thoughts, your stories, and the topics you'd like to explore in future episodes. And you can find my book, The Gift of Shift, on my website by scanning the QR code that Dan just had there, or you can find it on Amazon. Until next time, may you find strength in your vulnerability and courage in your journey. I thank you for listening. Breathe deeply, love openly, and live soulfully.
This has been Soul CPR with host Ann Papayotti. Breathe life back into your spirit with each episode, where she and special guests explore the relationships that hurt us and discover that healing can only begin with you. Tuesdays at 3 p.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave TV network.